Let me see. When was the last time you got out to the gun range?
Maybe a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And actually, probably like 3 weeks ago, I took my wife. She hadn't been in a while. And that was my only purpose is to go. Well, I've been going there, but I ain't been like doing nothing for myself really.
Yeah.
So, but I took my wife out 3 weeks ago. She a little rusty. And other than that, I don't even like going to the range, bro.
Yeah.
I hate
Well,
it.
I mean, you saw my situation that I had a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of that it kind of goes right along with what I wanted to talk about today. Let me pull something up real quick. Stand by. Hang on.
Let me see if I get my little this little light thing. What happened last week?
Well, remember I had that situation where I went out to the gun range out to
Oh,
what is it,
St.
English?
Fire?
No, no, no. When I went to English Pit, remember that
Oh
situation?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. But dumbasses.
Hey, just so you know, we are streaming right now.
What? How you
Yeah,
lying, right?
no, I'm dead ass. We're streaming right now. Just you're
Oh,
fine to get your light. You're good to go. You're good.
okay,
I just
hold on.
want you to know that we're streaming.
All right, cool. I'm like,
I didn't know what you were getting ready to say. So
oh, I was about to fire it up. I'm good though. Thank you for warning me.
absolutely,
I'm
absolutely,
trying to let me see. I'm usually in here with this fluorescent light, man. This fluorescent light is not fun.
man. You're good. You don't have to. You don't got to try and jazz it up for us.
I don't never jazz it up. Let me see. Hold on. I be trying to look sophisticated on here sometimes. I mean, you the man. You the Fox News man. You got everything. You got a whole studio in there.
Uh, you know, you
I
know,
ain't got all that, buddy. Hold on. Nah, that's not gonna work. That ain't gonna work for me.
man. You look fine. You look fine.
Yeah, I'm all right. So yeah, but I've been wanting to go to English Pit. I've been wanting to go. I wanted to go all summer, and I didn't even go.
Yeah. You and I
But
have to get out. You and I have to get out and do some firearms training. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Because not only are you a military veteran, but you are actually a firearms instructor. Just let everybody know who you are, the name of your company, what you do. I'm just going to turn the stage over to you.
okay, so my name is Alex Jones. I'm the real Alex Jones. I'm not the dude from Infowars. So if you go ahead and Google me, I guarantee you your algorithms are going to be so screwed up trying to find me. But my name is Alex Jones. I'm here in the Vancouver, Washington, and the Portland metro area, and I own and operate a company, a firearms coaching company, Jones Firearms Coaching. Obviously, that's my last name. And basically, I'm out here. I'm teaching uh, civilians, mainly civilians. I do teach at the academy down in Salem, Oregon, as well. But I teach civilians, gun safety, education, everything that you can think of from home and self defense, concealed carry concepts, um, use of force, all those things as well. So something that I enjoy doing. I think we need more people out in the community to do this stuff. There are some barriers, but I think there's not enough of it here in our area. At least not enough of it that people want to participate in it on a regular basis. So, but that's who I am, man. I'm originally from Louisiana. I was in the military for 14 years as a military police officer. Got out, and then I just stayed in law enforcement and kept moving around, basically. So that's it in a nutshell, buddy.
Yeah, how many what's the situation with you working for the police academy? Do they hire you as a private contractor, or are you on a contract with them, throughout the year, the calendar year? How does that work with you training down there?
No, they hired me as an actual employee. So like they don't have a contract with my company and nothing. They just hire me like they would any other employee. And then you go through whatever trainings and things requirements you have to do for them, and then you belong to them basically for that stuff. So you're teaching, their curriculum, you're going by their rules, uh, but it has nothing to do with my particular private business at all.
Okay. When you work with people in law enforcement, and this is a really good question, I think, when you're working with recruits, a lot of those guys who are coming into the police department down in Salem going through the academy, you have such a wide group of cadets, right? People with military experience, people, with maybe, armed security experience. But for the most part, I would assume here in Oregon, the demographic of people that come into the academy, they have what I'm assuming, and tell me if I'm wrong, they have a little bit of knowledge of firearms, or probably within the 2A community. Do you find that it's harder to teach people in that environment, or is it easier because they have kind of a base level background?
Well, I want to back up a little bit. I think there may be a false misconception about like because people are like more in 2A at Oregon. You'd be very surprised at how many students that come in, they don't have a wealth of knowledge about firearms, right? That they struggle to. So to kind of put them in two different buckets, I would definitely say that the ones who come in with a little bit more experience, like people who are kind of like doing firearms like me and you are doing them,
Mhm.
I wouldn't say it's challenging, but it's more like it's challenging more for them because they have to go through a lot of basic stuff that they already know, right?
Right.
So they just have to kind of like suck it up and deal with it. However, there are a percentage of students who they don't have no inclination of firearms, and it's helpful for them. So I would say, don't get me wrong, there are people who like to challenge things, and they don't like to get down with the rules. But overall, people who have that experience, they are more challenged with the basic stuff because they already know it, and it takes so long for us to get through it that they just have to suck it up at the end of the day.
Alex, I'm sitting here talking to you. I'm looking at the screen, and you are a firearms instructor. You're working for the police academy. You're a military veteran. I'm a military veteran. I'm advocating for 2A rights here in Oregon. When I see what I'm seeing on the screen right now, this is not something that I grew up, being aware of. And I think that the image of Black men specifically out front and center in terms of the 2A community or advocating for firearms training, all of those things, this is kind of new space for us. My question for you: what is the face of the Black gun community right now? I read a study the other day that said that ownership within the Black community has gone up, I think, like 30 something percent over the last 2 years, and that Black women and Black families make up the largest jump in terms of people purchasing firearms for the first time, legally purchasing firearms for the first time. So we are kind of in this new space, this new dynamic of people within our community that look like us being open about their firearms ownership. I've talked a lot about how when I was a kid, that was a huge topic that we never discussed because my parents grew up, under Jim Crow. My parents grew up with the idea that they couldn't have a firearm, right? Just based on where they lived in Arkansas and the situation that they had come up in. So, you know, what are your thoughts on kind of where we are now as a community trying to create this space within the 2A community?
That's a great question. I think there, of course, there's been some great strides since the Jim Crow era, but like you said, there's so many people that are buying guns in the Black community right now. But I think we don't really. It's a culture thing, right? So we know, we got to be honest about it. Gun culture in America is predominantly white male driven, right?
Yeah.
That's a fact. And the reason why you don't see a lot of it, one, because we don't have a lot of resources to plug into. We actually have what, a National African American Gun Association, that's out there, that's pretty well known. A lot of people don't know about it, but there's also gun clubs in certain states, probably every state you can think of. But here's the thing: even though we have this upsell of guns, there are certain areas. I'm going to say the area that we live in. Let's start here, right? The area that we live in and some of these inner cities around the United States of America, they are, I guess you can call it some kind of disparity, but they are buying guns, but they're not getting the proper education, not because they don't want it, but I think some of it has to do with culture, i.e., you won't see anybody from northeast Portland going out of their way to go to Camas or to Wallaton to go train, right? Because they feel like based on their social lifestyle and their politics, if they go up in there, you already know it's going to look and feel different for them, right? So a lot of them are kind of like compartmentalized. I've trained people from this area, African Americans, where when they come in, I'm like, have you trained? Like, nah, I've been had this gun for 3 years. I've been carrying this gun for 3 years, but they've never had proper training. I say, well, this gun, I don't think I want to go over there because it's going to be like a January 6th convention or something. You see what I'm saying? So they
Yeah.
go through that, thing, and we just don't have that major push. I mean, to be honest, like back in the 50s, I say back in the 60s, the NRA, or to say late 60s, 70s, the NRA actually supported some black, I wouldn't call them rebel groups, but certain black communities because they were trying to defend themselves from the KKK and all that stuff. Today, you don't really see a whole lot of specific cultural things around gun ownership in America. So I think the face of Black Gun America, the face of Black guns in America right now, honestly, from a cultural perspective, is what people only know. And the only thing that they know is what's on TV and in the media and entertainment. That's it.
Yeah, I feel like we have like two issues that we're trying to fight at the same time. And when I say we, I mean like you and me. Like there's people like you and me who I feel occupy two spaces, right? I don't live a urban lifestyle. Like I'm not in the hood. Like I don't ascribe to that. Like I don't carry myself that way. So it's hard for me to get people who live that type of lifestyle to come over towards this like way of life of the 2A community. Does that make sense? Like there's a very structured, and I don't want to say it's like a white way of doing things, but there's a very structured way that the 2A community in general operates, right? In terms of like firearm safety, like just the basic do's and don'ts. There's a decorum.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to get people in our community who have a more urban view of firearms to even want to be a part of that. Like, I don't know how to cross that bridge. Like, I have tried really hard to reach out to people and say, look, let's do some training. But like just the idea of training, most people who fit into that demographic, they see shooting at a stop sign or shooting at a tree at Big Mama's house, like that's training.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, just having their cousin show them how to shoot a 50 cal. You know what I mean? Like it's this weird dynamic. Like how do we bridge that gap with our own community to get them to buy in to this decorum of the 2A community that like you really have to understand and be a part of, because not only does it make you safe, but it puts you in better positioning in terms of knowing the laws that concern firearm ownership. What are your thoughts?
Well, I say tell them the truth about the culture. We got to tell the truth about our culture when it comes to this stuff. And two, like you said, with the laws, talking about the actual responsibility, man. Because when I was a parole officer, you had people that were getting gun charges that never had gun charges in their life. And he's like, how did you get this gun charge? Well, I had my gun under my seat. Well, fool, you supposed to know that you were supposed to have a concealed carry permit. I didn't know that. I thought, like, you know what I mean? So that's one side of it, is telling them about the laws and all that. But then the coach, you got to tell the truth. So when I'm from Louisiana, my dad was basically my first firearms instructor. We used to hunt and all that stuff. But he brought me to my first hunter's education course, and he had to leave me there because he had to go to work. And my mom picked me up. But I was the only black kid in this hunter education course, the only black kid, right? Out of all the people in the community, I was the only black kid that night. And I think to myself, I'm like, man, I wonder if this is how the rest of life is going to be when it comes around firearms and doing things that some people call, in our culture, this is what white people do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think to bridge the gap of that is, one, we got to educate them on the history, right? The history of Black people and 2A. Like, how far have we come from the beginnings, right? Because even when the Second Amendment was written, and whenever it was written, when the Bill of Rights came, Black people had no access to firearms whatsoever. I mean, back then you still had people that were enslaved, right? So where we go from there all the way up through Reconstruction, Jim Crow, all that, and look at some real fine points of like, yo, you remember the Black Panthers? Like, you know what I mean? And how they wasn't, most people, white people I've talked to, they always thought that the Black Panthers were a terrorist group, right?
Yeah.
But if you really explore Huey Newton and his philosophy around guns, um, you would see that, wait, this is a protective measure. So getting them to see that this is about protection and self-defense, on a defensive side, I think there's, with history and that aspect, we can kind of bridge the gap between it. But it takes a lot of work, you know what I mean? Because we have to compete with entertainment, movies, video games, all that stuff.
I have a question for you, Alex. In terms of our position in the 2A space, does perception matter? Does it matter how outside communities see Black men specifically embracing their firearms ownership? Do you think that it's important that we present a certain way? And I feel like when I ask this question, we're getting into respectability politics, right? If you dress a certain way, you carry yourself a certain way, you present yourself a certain way. Like when I go to the range, I think that I present myself for the most part like a 2A guy. Most of my shirts are Under Armour Freedom shirts or like a grunt style shirt. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah,
wear a hat, you know what I mean? Like the fact
yeah.
that I have my dog tags on, like am I trying to present myself in a cultural way that's more acceptable as opposed to some of the people that I see specifically on YouTube, Black gun content creators that are just on some wild shit. Black Rambo would be a great example. Black Rambo, like gold teeth,
Mhm,
dreadlocks. You see guys with like the 50 round extended magazine and a Glock 26.
mhm.
People that are putting Glock switches on shit and just like I don't fit into that, and I don't think that that's a good representation of Black gun ownership. But at the same time, when you try and tell someone who lives that kind of a lifestyle that that is detrimental to all of our perception within the community, the 2A community, I don't know that that's necessarily right either. So, like, how do I balance that dichotomy?
I think honestly, we got to look at what the Second Amendment is for, right? If the Constitution is for every American in the United States, right? Um, don't matter the color, creed, religion, sex, gender, whatever. We have to be careful, like you said, about compartmentalizing those people, because I'm a professional, I've been in the military. Me and you have chosen to adopt a certain lifestyle or culture because that's who we chose to be, right? We didn't do it because somebody made us do it. It's like, this is what we like. We want to dress like this. I wear 511 tactical pants every day. I'm either at my office, I'm either teaching, I even wear it in my off, when I'm not here because that's what I choose to do. However, there are people who, their fashion may not be what ours is, because we have to, and that's a huge point that you're making too, because if we say 2A is for people that dress like us, look like us, this and that, now we're building more disparity. We're actually doing more discrimination, right? The question is, even though Black Rambo or any other creator or content creator we see on YouTube, we got to look at what are the elements of like firearm safety, like, are these people being actually safe? Now we know that there are people that are just completely wild and it's like, you shouldn't have a firearm, right? But we have to judge them because they may be somebody that comes out in, some Timberland boots, some jeans, and a damn backwards hat and some all gold chains, right? And gold teeth. But I've seen it on YouTube where they're completely safe, they're completely controlled. They don't have any kind of safety issues when it comes to the gun. It's just that they look different, right? So
Yeah.
we have to be careful in 2A. We don't like make people we don't discriminate based on because that goes into, I don't even want to say the word, but that goes into like what I was saying about culture, right? Like, yes, I'm accepted. I might be more accepted because of my professionalism, my skills, my ability, my knowledge. But what if someone comes in? Here's a great example. You might have someone that, let's say you got a Muslim man that comes in and he wants to be trained, right? But he's wearing like Muslim garb, but he's pretty safe. He's pretty, he's pretty motivated to learn. What do we do with that? Oh, this guy, so the way we perceive things, our own biases is what sometimes takes people and compartmentalize them out of the 2A community because we think you got to look like Damien, you got to look like Alex, all black instructors should look and wear this, you know what I mean? Like, and I think that we can make a huge mistake when we do that sometimes.
So you're saying that the perception of how somebody dresses or carries themselves shouldn't matter. It doesn't play into their acceptance within the community. But I will say that we're going to play this viral video. And to me, this viral video is representative of the type of individuals that we're talking about. So it's not like when I say this or somebody else says that this is a problem, that we're talking in a vacuum, because this is the type of just buffoonery that I see prevalent across the space when it comes to Black content creators and Black gun ownership. I see more of this than I see of you and me. So I'm going to play the video and then I want to get your thoughts on it. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Crazy video. Well, I'm gonna say this. This one is sad because I feel like the kids don't stand no chance whatsoever, right? But two, me and you ask these questions sometimes, like, how can a person get on the internet and do the things that they do? But then I come up and try to do a basic safety video on things, and then like I get shut down, I get shadow banned, and all this stuff gets like millions and millions of views, right? So it comes into a little political or social question. Like, one, I feel like that's what the people who control the bots, the AIs or whatever, they want this content. The reason is because me and you, we fit into a certain demographic where they don't want you to see that we are knowledgeable, that we're training, that we have the skills, right? And we're willing to share it because it's too dangerous, in my opinion, right? But if we can find little kids popping guns, spanking strippers' asses and throwing money and all, these are kids, dude. This is like pretty pathetic. So as long as they can get that content out there, it works as propaganda in their favor. It's a system, in my opinion. That's what I learned from it. It's a system that allows this stuff to continue to carry on. So my thoughts of the video specifically, like this is I don't want to even think that there were props. I'm pretty sure those were probably real guns in there.
I mean, they look real. They look real, legit.
They look real. They could have been pellet guns or BB guns, but regardless of the fact, what you're seeing, the behavior, and I know that's where you were going with it before you turn on video, but the behavior, this is not indicative of what 2A culture is, right? So there is an exception. You're right about that. However, you can take those same people that may dress and look like that, and they can still be, secure and safe and knowledgeable about firearms. This is on a whole different level right here. I don't even know. I'm not even going to get started, but I don't even know, one, who decides to film kids doing this in the first place. And two, you got to think about these kids didn't learn this right before the video. That's
Oh
been
no,
part.
yeah,
They didn't learn this right before they turned on the camera and pressed play. They obtained this through visualization of other people doing this consistently, right? So where the bridge we're trying to gap the bridge we're trying to cross and close the gap on, they, as long as they're seeing more of this, they can never see more of us. Now, here's the crazy thing. If me and you started a 501c3 right now, and we said we want to go out to all these urban communities and teach firearm safety, we're not going to have much luck.
no,
We're not going to have much luck because they say, why do we want to do that? This is not a harm reduction. We just want to take the guns away
yeah.
because they see the killing, they see the murder, they see this and that. But what they don't see is, well, guess what? These same people in these neighborhoods have a right to protect themselves as well. So even the people that's not hood or gangster, you got aunties, grandmothers, uncles, older folks that are in the neighborhood that are being affected by this stuff. So what about them? How can you just take, so that's how I see it, is just this stuff that you just showed. It is a prime example of narrative, what they want us to see. They would never show much of us being out there training these kids, training these community members, because it doesn't fit a certain narrative, right? But
Well, that makes me, kind of go to this next question. Like, do we, and when I say we, I'm talking about you specifically, me specifically, content creators that are on the spectrum. You do have this level of buffoonery, and then you go all the way across to the other side, and you have Colion Noir. You have some really good body bio tactical. There's some guys out there that are putting it in, and they're doing great work in terms of, you know, positive content, positive representation, I would say, right? Do those people in that fulfill that end of the spectrum, do we have a responsibility to speak out about something like this? I feel like I advocate so much for the gun community in general that when I see something like this, I feel like I'm obligated to talk about it. But then when it involves, our community, quote unquote, I really feel obligated to talk about it. Do you, as a firearms instructor and as a black man, do you feel obligated to speak out about something like that when you see it?
100%, you have to speak out about it. For some people, it's, do I speak out at what cost? Because I don't think I've ever seen Colion Noir do a video where he's specifically talking about this right here, right? I never seen anything like that. But at what cost? Because this guy got sponsorships and all this stuff. But I think we should be speaking out about it. But when we speak out, here's the thing: it's who we're speaking out to.
Mm,
Because if we're speaking out to the people in our culture, right? The people in the 2A culture, then to be honest, some of these people are narcissists. It confirms their bias for them, right? It
wow.
confirms
Yeah.
it for the, it comes, I see, I told you that's how they are. This is what they do. So when we speak out, yes, we speak out, but we need to speak to the community. Like we got to speak to the people that are in this video more than ever. So it's okay for us to get behind our cameras and do our channels and speak out about it, but there's like a little damage being done because it's confirming the biases. And then they look at us and say, oh, man, them guys are cool, man. They're straight, they're cool, right? Because now it seems like we're like critically criticizing a culture that we know so much about, and some of us have definitely lived. So we got to be careful with that, because sometimes that confirms their bias about us, and then it just perpetuates and snowballs. You know what I mean?
That's a very good point, Alex. That's a very good point. I haven't thought about it like that. It puts people like you and me in a position where you're like, damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Mhm.
Because again, I want to advocate for ownership across the board. I don't want any marginalized group to feel that this space isn't for them. And I think the more people that embrace their Second Amendment, the better it strengthens our argument across the board. But how do we engage people? How do we engage the grown adult men that were behind those kids in this conversation? And I want to give you the final word on what you think is the way that we reach someone that would think that that's okay. And we have to understand that there's a cultural systemic issue that has led them to think that that's okay. How do we engage that conversation in order to try and pull them more towards our side of the equation?
Well, as black firearms instructors, men or women, we have to find the organizations that work with these people, right? So, like here in Portland, I work with an organization called Black Men in Training. I help them out. Not as much as I should be because I'm always busy, but find the organizations that are working with Black youth mainly, right? And then throw it on the table and say, look, this is a part, and it doesn't have to be like no tactics and nothing. Like we need to talk about gun safety, gun laws, gun restrictions, gun storage, all those type of things to educate people on everything that they can possibly know about firearms that they never knew before. But it has to go through those channels, in my opinion, because most of the people on the internet that may be young and Black kids that may be in that kind of situation, most likely they are listening to or watching those people that you talked about, right? So for us, our Black instructors, we have to kind of create our own lane. And I don't want to make it a race thing because Second Amendment to me is for everybody. However, there is a cultural piece that is completely missing from the 2A community and Black people, or those places where the disparities of no training. So I think getting into organization or going with organizations that have the opportunity to work with young people, if it's done right, if it's presented right, because think about it, they give what they do. They got needle exchanges, bro, right? We got all this stuff. You got needles exchange. They give you dope. They give you this. They give you that, and that's harm reduction for them. But you probably looked on your email already and seen 3-4 shootings in the past few days. And every time you look on the picture, they're Black or they're brown.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to figure out how to get into these organizations where we can present some real, like the cultural piece of it, mainly based off of what you just showed. And how do we combat that to make a more positive image of it? You know what I mean? Like, not saying they have to be like me or you, but make a positive image of it. Give them the history. The history is huge because they don't know the history of what people had to do. Like they were fighting off police officers back in the 60s and the 70s. Think about that. Now these days, all they doing is fighting off each other at the end of the day. Times have changed. So I say get within the organizations that work with these young people and Black people and then just start spreading the word. You know what I mean?
I think that's a great thought. I think that's a great way of looking at it. It comes down to people getting involved, and whether we're talking about this situation or any situation, we can complain or we can try and be the change. And so I think what you're saying in terms of getting involved in organizations and meeting people where they are and showing them a different way, that's got to be the answer. But man, that seems like a very daunting task.
So I'm glad you said that last thing. It seems like a daunting. I don't know if you've seen, but like I sometimes I try to do it at least once a month. I'll go out to Pioneer Square. I bring my PA system, my microphone, set up my table, all my training aids, and I start talking to people about gun safety. And one of the things that they say, white and Black alike, well, they're two different things. White person comes, there's like, are there any other Black instructors around? Like, I've never seen a Black dude, like, you know what I mean? On a professional level.
Yeah.
They never seen it. And then the other side is I may get a Black person that asks the same thing, but then they will go further and say, so what do you think about carrying a gun? I mean, with all this white supremacy and stuff going on. So their heads are in a different space too when it comes to firearms and self-defense sometimes. So I think it's interesting, like in our area, we already know there's very little, if not many, that actually do firearms on a professional level.
Yeah. Well, hey, Alex, I appreciate your input and I appreciate your thoughts on this. And it's definitely not something that we're going to solve overnight, but I want to continue to work with you and try and find a way where you and I both can help and get involved with some of these kids, because these kids in that video are on a path towards destruction or death, and they're not alone. So we have to do something. When my time is up on this planet and I'm standing before God, I want him to be able to say, you did something, you did your best, So appreciate you, man. It's always a pleasure, bro.
Yeah, for sure, man. Thank you for having me. I appreciate that. For sure.
Anytime. You're always welcome here, dude.
All right, man. Thank you.